Greetings, everyone. I am Dr. Upasana Singh from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, which is based in the sunny city of Durban in South Africa. I currently am the academic leader in the discipline of Information Systems and Technology at our institution. My presentation today is going to be based on my experiences of trying to implement online assessment using feminist pedagogy. So what exactly are the principles of feminist pedagogy? Well, some of the principles include engaged teaching, engaged learning, continuous reflection by the students, and ensuring that students are no longer simply passive consumers of knowledge. What we are trying to achieve in the classroom itself is the fostering of mutual respect between teachers and students and among students themselves, developing the shared responsibility for learning and promoting empathy for each other. In order to try to get students to engage with each other, the first approach which I adopted was trying to recognize the diversity in my online classroom. Now, in a physical classroom, this is really easy to do because visually you're able to identify students of different races, different genders, different cultural backgrounds, and so on. In the online classroom, this becomes a lot more difficult because how do you know what background your students are from? What culture do they belong to? What is their ethnicity, religion, gender? What is the age group in the classroom itself? The country of origin, and sometimes we even need to understand the types of disabilities which the students are facing in our classroom. Diversity also means including recognizing prior learning of students. So what type of learning backgrounds do they come from? What are their preferred learning styles? And what type of intellectual ability do they have? The easiest way for me to recognize the diversity present in my classroom was using the VARC questionnaire. And this enabled me to distinguish between different types of learners in my classroom and to understand the correct mix of how I need to prepare my learning materials and assessments for my students in order to satisfy the four main groups, which are the visual learners, the oral learners, the read and write learners, and the kinesthetic learners. Part of recognizing the diversity is to understand that when we are implementing constructivist learning in a learning environment, the best way to increase the engagement amongst the students is to disarm these barriers which might exist in terms of diversity between students in the classroom itself. So one of the ways in which I try to include engaged assessment was to give my students case studies and to allow them to communicate and to discuss about these case studies in the breakaway sessions. Initially, what we found was when students were asked to engage in the online classroom and they were in the main classroom, students were reluctant to voice their opinions about different aspects of the case studies and the insights. So through the use of breakaway groups, what happened is that students started feeling more comfortable because they were sharing their opinions with each other in smaller groups of 2 or 3 students, engaging, debating about the case study, debating about their insights. And so when they came back into the main classroom, they were a lot more confident and comfortable to discuss their findings and their insights into these case studies in the larger classroom. Some students had barriers with regard to English, where English was not their first, their main language. Other students were just uncomfortable in the online space. So through the use of these breakaway groups, students felt a lot more connected to each other. And therefore, when they came back into the main classroom, where we had only about 35 students, but the students felt a lot more confident and the discussions were a lot more robust and engaging. This formed part of their assessment towards their final grade for this particular module. And we had a few of these sessions within the module itself. Another principle which was used was the shared responsibility for learning. So in this environment, we had the students undertake a group assignment. And in the group assignment, they had to work together with fellow students, some of whom they had never met personally. What this helped with was their empathy with the students, their fellow students' access to technology, with their infrastructure limitations, and also ensuring that the task which was assigned to them was completed on time. This was really necessary because students found ways for them to engage with each other outside of the normal classroom. They started making use of social platforms like WhatsApp to continue their discussions. I also learned from students during this entire process because when they conducted their presentations, they made use of new forms of technology. And in these forms of technology, they also made use of different devices, different activities, and different techniques, which formed a communal learning process during their presentation itself. So the assignment itself and having this presentation component, which had a written component, it also had a presentation component, catered for the 4 different types of learners: the kinesthetic learners, the visual learners, the oral learners, and the read or write learners. Some of the feedback which we received from students with regard to this entire process of sharing this responsibility for learning was that it helped them to foster mutual respect for each other, greater respect for the lecturer in terms of the use of technology to be able to complete the learning process. It encouraged them to take responsibility for their own learning, to participate in this learning process, to actively participate in the learning process, and to develop this personal well-being for their entire learning process. And finally, it helped them to contribute towards the knowledge which they were developing in this course itself. So as you can see, the adoption of the feminist pedagogy shifted the learning from solely being where the lecturer is the sage on the stage, to students now taking an active role in the learning process and encouraging collaborative learning. One of the methods in which I try to engage students in more cultural diversity was to introduce guest speakers, international guest speakers from different countries. And through their live presentations and sharing of their experiences, the students were also able to get exposure to cultural diversity. Not all feedback was positive, obviously, because students have now become quite lazy in the online space. They did not like the fact that we had early morning lectures and preferred to sleep in late and have their lectures in the afternoon. But essentially, what I would like to say is that, in my personal opinion, we are moving towards a blended approach in both the teaching, learning, and the assessment process in the future, obviously skewing more towards the digital modes of learning and assessment as the years go on. So what we need to do is we need to prepare ourselves for more diverse online assessment practices and to adopt varying online assessment tools to complement the pedagogies associated with the delivery of online lectures, and making sure that the assessment process is more encouraging, more engaging, and more diverse for our students. Thank you for listening.